slavery to be used the way the Romans used people, maybe sexually, maybe brutalized, maybe polluted, and so on. They wanted to enjoy the kingdom with their children, and the only way to enjoy the kingdom was that they should be pure. So they buried under the synagogue floor, and we can show that at Masada, the bones passage from Ezekiel. The bones passage from Ezekiel is the passage about the resurrection and the rising of the bones. I intuited from that the Sicarii believed in resurrection of the dead, and that they believed that if they would go impure into death, they would meet each other again. In any case, the Sicarii group, ultimately, other leftovers go down into Egypt, and Josephus tells us they are troublemakers in Egypt in the 80s and 90s. They're troublemakers in North Africa. So they continue this uprising. So I would think that what we have here at Qumran, and Qumran documents were found on Masada, is a version of this Sicarii Essene group. But I would prefer to call them the Messianic movement in Palestine. I think that was a much clearer name for them rather than all these pejorative names. Why the Messianic movement in Palestine, which again gets us to Christian origins? Because over and over and over again they refer to the star prophecy. The star prophecy comes from Numbers 24:17, the prophecy that a star will rise from Jacob, a scepter to rule the world. This is in at least 3 known documents from Qumran and plays a central place. This is, for the Gospels, the star over Bethlehem paradigm. And the world ruler, the Messiah, was supposed to be called the star as far as they understood it. And the second Jewish uprising that continued after the first, and there was a second one in 132 to 136, the leader was known as Bar Kokhba, but he adopted the term Bar Kokhba, Kokhba meaning star, son of the star, because he understood that the star prophecy was the moving force of revolutionary activity in Palestine. Josephus lets the cat out of the bag at the end of the Jewish war. He says, the thing that most moved our young men to revolt against Rome was the prophecy that a world ruler would come out of Palestine. And that's the star prophecy. So in my mind, what we have at Qumran is not only the literature of the Essene or Essene Zealot movement, but also of the Messianic movement and, in fact, the revolutionary movement against Rome. I'm sorry to give you so much in one bite.
Stop. I'm running out of tape.
Yeah, and you can ask me, if this is all important.
Shoot.
Well, the Hippolytus manuscript, which most people overlook, I only discovered it in more recent times, a tremendous eye-opener, because he describes the Sicarii Essenes, and it's very odd to group Sicarii with Essenes. And he says that what they would do if they heard anyone talking about the law who was not circumcised, they would either, like a Muslim in modern day, either offer him Islam or the sword. They would actually kill him or allow him to be circumcised. He could choose circumcision or be killed. In other words, that's how holy they took the law to be. So this illustrates a little bit of their mentality. Then he says that in our recent war with Rome, and Josephus says the same thing about Essenes in the Jewish war, but he puts it slightly different. He said their bravery was incredible to us who were observing it. Josephus knew these things because he was an interrogator of prisoners. He had betrayed his cause. He had gone over to the Romans. He had applied the star prophecy, the world ruler prophecy, both to Vespasian and Titus. In return, he had become their pampered part of their entourage, given a Roman name. But he ended up, which is why his data is so encyclopedic and why we're so grateful for it, being an interrogator of prisoners. So he knew whereof he spoke. In fact, there's one incredible episode in the war where Josephus is representing the Roman side and the city is under siege and all the revolutionaries are on the ramparts, and Josephus has been sent out by Titus, the son of the Roman emperor to be, General Vespasian, to try to ask them to surrender. And he goes around the walls and he calls up asking them in their own language to surrender. And they're all watching him from the ramparts, and suddenly someone throws a sling and a stone hits him on the head, and he falls, and this is a true story, I think, falls down in a swoon, and he admits in his manuscript that a huge cheer went up from the ramparts because everyone thought that their enemy Josephus was was dead. This is a beautiful human moment. Of course, he did just get up, limp away. He has a wounded head. It would make a good Hollywood story. In any case, he says that these Essenes exhibited tremendous bravery under torture and participated in the recent war against Rome. Well, that goes against what most people think Essenes do, not fight, retiring, or apolitical. They were one of the groups that were participating in the war against Rome. One of the leaders was John the Essene. We have a war scroll in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We call that Qumran. That dovetails very, very nicely with that. But he says that under torture, they would not call any man Lord, whether the Roman Emperor or Jesus. They would not call any man Lord. You could not force them to call any man Lord. They would not curse or blaspheme the lawgiver, Moses or the law or so on. And finally, he said, and this is in Hippolytus' version, they would not eat things sacrificed to idols. Nothing could make them eat things sacrificed to idols. Now, in the normal Jewish war, the earlier version, in Greek, Josephus says they would not eat forbidden things. Hippolytus says they would not eat things sacrificed to idols. Go to your New Testament. Go to the exchanges between James and Paul. What do you find? In the book of Acts 15 and 21, James bans things sacrificed to idols for overseas Christian believers. Repeats the ban in 21. Paul in 1 Corinthians 8-12 attacks James's ban on things sacrificed to idols. He laughs at it. He heaps scorn on it. He says, why should we worry about eating things sacrificed to idols? He says, idol is nothing in this world. It's just in their mind. But he says, since these people are weak, since they have weak consciences, meaning James and all of the others, the leadership, the people who observe the law, because they are so weak, when they are present, don't eat things sacrificed to idols while they are here. And because of them, I will not eat meat again forever. In other words, I am a vegetarian like they were. But in the very next chapter, he says, eat anything in the butcher shops. There are no forbidden things. And finally, in chapters 11 and 12, he goes on to evoke his doctrine of communion with the body and blood of Christ. He goes on, in fact, to talk about eating Jesus' body in symbolic form as a wafer or bread and drinking his blood, which would have been total anathema to Jewish people. And if you look at Acts and James's instructions, along with things sacrificed to idols, is the ban on blood. So we have a real confrontation there developing between Paul and James on just the issue, Josephus says, was the thing that Essenes refused to bend on and preferred death under any torture. They preferred death under any torture for those things. Not eating things sacrificed to idols, not blaspheming the lawgiver, and the third was not calling any man Lord. So they preferred death, and Josephus admired the tolerance of pain that they showed in these torture sessions, which he was certainly present at and having a good deal of fun torturing them. Sorry to add that, but you might